The ultimate potential of crypto is to get more economic freedom in the world. In high economic freedom countries, there's like higher GDP per capita, but there's also like less corruption, there's less war, lower infant mortality, like all these kind of downstream effects. Crypto is going to update the entire financial system globally, and like the majority of all payments will run on these crypto rails. That's how we're going to get more economic freedom in the world.
How do you tell the story of Coinbase now? I mean, it's such a huge story. Do you think about it in particular eras? Is the going public era a different, distinct era, or do you even map it to like the bull cycles and the bear cycles? Does that have a tangible feel in the Coinbase story internal to the company?
Fred Wilson had this great thing he told me one time. He said, like, companies have multiple founding moments on the way to being a public company.
Yeah.
And that was definitely true in our case. So the first era was like Fred Ursum and myself in an apartment just grinding it out, like, 14-hour days, just doing everything ourselves, like answering customer support tickets, like trying to recruit people, trying to get anybody to join, writing code ourselves, right? And so that was like the pre-product market fit, like how do we try to get something moving? And then you go through hypergrowth, right? And your problems totally change, which is like, how do we get a real set of leaders into this company? How do we not get hacked? How do we go raise more money, like build a real board? And so you go through this period of hypergrowth where we were like, we'd never managed anybody, but we were managing 25, 50, 100, 500 people. And we were hyper scaling, just trying to keep up with all the demand. And then, crypto went through ups and downs. Eventually, Fred decided to go found his own company, which was super successful, like Paradigm, and he's doing another company now. So I had to bring in an executive team. That was like its own experience with a bunch of infighting and blow-ups and drama. And I finally got an exec team that worked. And then we went public. And, Emily Choi is like our president and COO now. So she's like, it's multiple foundings along the way to get to these eventual outcomes. It takes like 10 years to be an overnight success.
What other industries have you looked to for learnings to kind of like build through these boom and bust cycles?
Every company has different challenges. So I actually don't think ours are that bad. But one of the challenges we had when we were getting ready to go public was like our revenue was super unpredictable and volatile, right? Like we'd have a trading quarter where we would just blow it out of the water and we'd be like printing money, and then it'd be down like 70% the next quarter or something. And, in the public markets, investors really love you to have these predictable revenue streams. I still don't to this day know why they're so fixated on that. It seems like they should be thinking about the growth potential, but they love the predictability of it. And so, yeah, we had to look at oil and gas. There's like some energy brokerage, like actually the traditional brokerages like NASDAQ and NYSE, like they have the same issue. If they can tell you, one of them told me one time is like, if you can tell me what the S&P 500 is going to do next quarter, I'll tell you what our revenue is going to be. But of course, like if you can do that, you got it made in other ways. So, but whenever I feel like we're having a bad time, I always look at like the hard tech companies, right? Like the biotech companies in the public markets get beat up way more than we do. They have much less predictable revenue. Their revenue is pushed out way farther. Mm-hmm. All my friends who are working on hardware companies, I'm like, wow, they're really doing entrepreneurship. I'm like, they're always calling me up and like, I've got 4 weeks of cash. We're trying to raise money, and I'm like,
bail me out.
You've been trying to raise money like every month for the last 18 months, just living like 1 month to the next month, and like those guys have true grit. So. In software, our margins are high, and it kind of covers up mistakes that we make. And we actually had revenue relatively early in our journey, whereas in biotech, you have to invest in it for 10 years to try to get your first dollar revenue sometimes.
There were a whole bunch of narratives around crypto back in 2012, even before decentralization, resistance to government control, anonymity, just faster payments, all these different things. What's the state of the union from your perspective? How would you grade the different executions across the original goals?
Well, the ultimate vision for crypto was always economic freedom in my mind. In fact, that's the mission of Coinbase, is to increase economic freedom in the world. So that's like, how to give people more self-sovereignty, more control of their money. It enables them to not only like live a freer life and have things taken away from them, but it's better for society, because if we have a society with good property rights and sound money and like rule of law and these things, you can actually try more things. Like if people are rewarded with the upside of their labor, they're gonna go try more ambitious things in the world. So you see that there's actually economists who measure across different countries like how high is economic freedom, and you see that in high economic freedom countries there's like higher GDP per capita, but there's also like less corruption, there's less war, there's lower infant lower infant mortality, like all these kind of downstream effects. So the ultimate potential of crypto is to get more economic freedom in the world. And we've been trying to push on that through a variety of ways. Like one way we've done it is by getting legislation passed in the US or pushing on that. We had a big influence in this last election. The crypto voters showed up in a massive way. We had like 2 million advocates who raised their hand in the US saying they wanted to elect a pro-crypto Congress and candidates. We had like a couple $100 million in the Fair Shake Super PAC. And so we now have the most pro-crypto Congress that we've ever seen. And we're on the cusp of getting stablecoin and market structure legislation passed. The other thing is we've been pushing on our products, right? They have to be easier to use for the average person. Like the early crypto products were just, it felt like some computer scientists came from on high down the mountain and they tried to make this accessible to mere mortals. And like, that was never going to work. So the products are slowly getting easier and simpler for average people to use. And crypto is growing into these areas like payments and tokenizing securities. And it's not just like trading as a use case, right? So we're getting closer and closer, but ultimately I think crypto is going to update the entire financial system globally, and like the majority of all payments will run on these crypto rails. They're just faster, cheaper, more global, and that's how we're going to get more economic freedom in the world.
Do you think the conversation around economic freedom over the next few years will shift away from the US and more towards emerging markets who are adopting digital assets, but may face pushback from their governments?
Yeah, it's a great point because I think the unmet need is higher in some of these other countries, emerging markets, right? Where people like in Turkey, they're getting like 70% inflation a year or something. It's just like, it's devastating to their entire economy. People have very high demand for the dollar and then Bitcoin. Same thing in Nigeria, et cetera. Now, some of those markets are going to be very resistant to it, like especially if the government is not fully aligned with the people's interests. Like the government wants to run their fiat currency because then they can kind of print money and abuse it. And, it's one of these kind of original sins of like fiat currency, right? So, or like some of these markets have capital controls, right? Like in India. So I think the governments will be somewhat reluctant to embrace crypto in some of these places, but the average person will love it. Like the people are demanding it, they're rushing toward it. The governments are a little hesitant. And so in democratic countries, it'll be allowed because more people will vote for it. But in places like China, they're really cramping down on it. I don't think North Korea is going to add it anytime soon. So it's a little bit like the internet, right? China has the Great Firewall of China. North Korea has their own private internet. And so some of these like really corrupt regimes, I think they'll try to crush crypto, but in most places in the world, it'll happen.
I want to talk about Base. Obviously, it's powering a lot of consumer crypto use cases right now. Like, how did that come about? What has it been like incubating something like that inside Coinbase?
I can't take too much credit for it, by the way. The biggest thing that I did was we have a very entrepreneurial culture of different people we've brought in. And Jesse Pollock came to me at one point. And he was like, hey, I want to work on a new chain. And I was like, cool, like take a small team, go run at it, like 2 pizza team or whatever, like 5 people. And I had no idea if it was going to work. But the biggest thing, he deserves all the credit, to be honest. The only thing I did was I kind of shielded it from the rest of the organization a little bit and just gave them time to cook. And he went through like 5 or 6 iterations. And I saw a couple of these along the way. And I was like, honestly, I have no idea if this is going to work. And it turned out to actually really hit. And so if there is like a secret to this, which I don't know if it's a secret, but it's like you have to allocate some percentage of your budget to these venture bets and make them small bets because you want to have 2, 3, 4 people like working on it, kind of like a YC company, not like don't put 100 people on it or something. It's going to be like a big bureaucratic thing. As long as they're small bets, you can tolerate like 75% of them not working out, and once in a while something hits and it pays for all the rest of the bets. I mean, it's kind of like having a venture capital internal at the company. So we actually set up this thing called we call it like Next Bets. And twice a year, anybody in the company can come pitch. It's like a group of people, we call it like internal venture capital. And they're basically the people who run different product groups, but there's also some really kind of like smart young engineers, et cetera. Basically, if any one of them raised their hands and said, I want to fund that out of their budget, then you're greenlit to go do it. You don't have to get a unanimous yes. You just need one person to say yes. And there's actually some pretty big, like USDC, I will tell you, I actually voted no on USDC which was a terrible. Now it's like almost $1 billion of revenue or something for us. And I voted no because I was like a little skeptical. I didn't think it was like decentralized enough or something. But luckily, somebody else on our team voted yes, so it got funded and it turned out to be a massive thing. So it shows you how much I know.
Is there a world where Coinbase shares are securitized on chain.
There's a great book, I think it's called PayPal Wars. I believe it's about the founding of PayPal. And, there was a lot of like that libertarian ideology of like economic freedom was in the founding team. As you can imagine, they went on to do many other things. And I think like in many ways, crypto is fulfilling the vision that the early PayPal team started with around economic freedom. And the main reason I can think of for that, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. They got acquired by eBay, et cetera. The team changed some of the motivations. But like at the end of the day, nobody wanted a US company to run the global financial system. Like if you were the Indian government or a random person in some country, like do I really want to put all my money in some US company? But if it was a decentralized protocol that nobody controlled, like kind of like the internet, it's like, okay, we'll all kind of integrate with that. And so Bitcoin was like the key innovation, I think, that unlocked that opportunity. You also asked about like kind of tokenizing securities. And I do think that's an exciting area. We're pretty interested in that as well. It's like the trading of stocks is just one more area of financial services that could be improved by crypto. I mean, as an example, there's a lot of people around the world who want access to US securities, but they don't have a simple way to open a brokerage account and track that. So it's like the international access would be better. You could get like perpetual futures markets spun up for these stocks, which would give traders more leverage. You could do 24/7 trading. You could do fractional shares. So I actually think like most traditional securities are going to get tokenized on chain in the next 5 years. We've been working a little bit with like the SEC task force on this and trying to find the right path to do it. So it's something we're interested in, but yeah, obviously nothing to announce today.
Where are you getting the most leverage from AI internally?
One is that I guess people are calling it agentic commerce, right? Which is like, your agent is increasingly kind of like your assistant, and it might need to book you a ticket to go somewhere, or it might need to get through a paywall or something. Like if you're like, hey, go read all the research papers from Nature on this topic and give me a report, like, okay, those cost money to ingest it. And so AI agents are going to need to have a wallet to go pay for stuff. We think that crypto will be the backbone of that. Like USDC on Base is starting to be adopted by some. We actually released this open source thing called Agent Kit, which makes it easy for any LLM to have a wallet. And we're working on a couple of checkout type solutions with other players that we'll announce soon, where the AI agent can actually get through the checkout flow in many of these e-commerce sites and pay with USDC on Base. So I think agentic commerce will be a big one. I think it's also, we're going to get like AI agents that can be kind of like your RIA, like your registered investment advisor, or almost like your trading bot. So imagine like you're in the Coinbase app and you kind of tell them, hey, I want to put like $1,000 or $10,000 something into this account. And you're talking to a trading bot and you're like, just go make me money. I don't know. Like,
don't make mistakes. Tell it, make me, I joked about this before, 10% compounded return daily. Don't make mistakes.
Don't make mistakes.
Yeah. And it may have some questions for you, or like it may make mistakes. And like, there's a lot of details to figure out. But I think having a trading bot like do a lot of that for you. And it's like, hey, like if it goes up a lot, lock in some gains, so I don't regret it later. Like you can give it kind of abstract concepts like that, and it knows how to make the limit orders for you or whatever.
Can you talk about the extortion attack, how you handled it? And I'm particularly interested in going forward. There's a lot of tools in your toolkit. You can throw more money, more people, more technology at the problem. What's the next few years look like in terms of beefing up security?
I mean, we've had a really good track record on security at Coinbase over the last 12 years. And even in this attack, we didn't see any private keys or funds accessed directly by the attacker. So what unfortunately, they were able to do is they were able to bribe some of our customer support agents and to share with them like personal information on customers, like name, address, et cetera. And, they want this information, attackers want this information because they want to text people, call people, try to socially engineer them and to get them to send their money. And so unfortunately, they were able to successfully do that with a handful of customers, which we've reimbursed 100% at this point. And then they sent us this demand once we were, they realized they'd been found out and customers were kind of getting educated about this. They sent us this demand for $20 million, or we're going to release all this information. And it was an interesting moment. We came together and thought about it. And, on the one hand, we could have paid them the money, right? But we talked to a bunch of security researchers and people, and they were like, there's really, what typically happens in these cases is if you pay the extortion, they're just going to come back in 3 months and extort you again. Yeah. And it's like, do we really want to be in this situation where we're like funding their next attack? and like rewarding this kind of behavior, or do we want to try to create a deterrent to this kind of behavior? So we decided to flip it. And as you probably saw, we put out a $20 million bounty for any information leading to their arrest and conviction. And that's been kind of a crazy experience. I mean, just as one data point for comparison, after 9/11, the US government put out a $25 million bounty on Osama bin Laden, and we put out a $20 million bounty on these guys. So we had like maybe 5,000 like tips or inquiries like come into the email that we put out there. Most of it was junk. And we kind of whittled it down. There's about like 70 or so credible leads, I would say. We always have to be a little careful because some of these could be like the threat actor themselves sort of trying to throw us off the trail or run down some wild goose chase. Some of the other people sending in tips or leads are like other threat actors who kind of have beef with these guys, or like they're kind of like no honor amongst thieves, right?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we wanted to create, was a real deterrent here. It's like if you're going to attack our customers, you need to look over your shoulder and always wonder like who's going to turn me in, or who did I interact with in my entire life who might have known about this, who's going to turn me in. So anyway, I can't say too much more. We're working closely with law enforcement, but we're going to run down those leads and hopefully get a good result. This was definitely a good moment for us to go implement a bunch of changes, and we mobilized a team of about 300 or 400 people like right away that just went into overdrive, kind of trying to lock down a lot of these systems. A lot of it was not just our own systems. There's vendors that we work with that we needed to push them to hit a higher bar as well. We did relocate some of our customer support operations. The ones that got targeted the most were these overseas contractors and things like that. And you can imagine like some of the money being offered as bribes that would have been like pretty impactful even in the United States if people were there. And we need to have 24/7 coverage, et cetera. So it's not a perfect solution to like just move it all in the US and pay people more. Like it doesn't 100% solve it, but we are relocating some of those support operations and then essentially just hardening our systems. Like luckily we had some good controls already which limited the scope of it, but we obviously didn't do enough. And so we've got to keep investing in that.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for younger builders, maybe the younger version of yourself?
I think if you look at like the top 5 most exciting tech trends in the world right now, like my 5 would probably be AI, crypto for increasing economic freedom and all that, brain-machine interfaces, fusion energy, and longevity. I think is also in no particular order, by the way. Like there's a biotech company I co-founded called New Limit, which is working on epigenetic reprogramming, which is really cool. It's a longevity company. I think to me, it's like, how do we accelerate progress?
Sure.
And I think the smartest people from a talent point of view, like the smartest kids up and coming, people, whatever, they all want to work in things that are going to change the world. So like those are the top 5. And I think like there's actually a pretty incredible amount of talent in crypto. It's like you just got to go try ambitious bets and be okay with some of them not working. Like I think sometimes people think that, well, Coinbase started and now it's big and so they're just a success. And it's like, no, that's not true. Like we're trying these venture bets all the time. Like I told you about USDC and Base. I mean, there's others that didn't work, right? Like we launched Coinbase NFT and it was pretty much a flop. Like we launched Coinbase in Japan. We invested all this money and time, like didn't work for a bunch of reasons I can tell you if you want. And we shut that down. And so we're constantly like, stay hungry, stay foolish. Like we're trying new ideas a lot, and you have to be okay with like 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 just not working.
I have one last question, then we'll let you get out of here. And feel free to just take it as like meta commentary on the nature of the question. But who is Satoshi Nakamoto?
So the official answer is it doesn't really matter because like the idea stands on its own. And so if anybody ever comes out and we find out who it is, like in their will or whatever, but the unofficial answer I think is probably some combination of like Hal Finney and Nick Szabo and maybe one other person, but that's my guess, is that it was a collaboration between those people. And but ultimately it doesn't matter. And Hal Finney is frozen at Alcor, but he's no longer living, so we don't but maybe if Alcor actually works, which was a big if, in the future we bring him back to life, we'll find out.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
We'll have him on the show then.
Yeah, we'll have him on the show. We'll have him on the show.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic. Jordy, any other questions?
No, this was great.
This was
Love
fantastic.
to have you back
Thank
on
you
again
so much.
soon. You're our first public company Fortune 500 CEO.
Yeah, that's right. So thanks for doing this.
amazing.
This is a big milestone for us. We really appreciate it.